seize the moment.
Anyways, Jay, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, brother.
Good to have you in. I'm excited to chat and sort of share your story a little bit. Yeah, so let's start with like training, man. How's training been going for you the past couple months?
Yeah, like training pre-COVID was getting fun, but through COVID, it's obviously forced, like not to press pause, but it's just forced a change in direction, I'd call it. Like I kind of posed the question to myself: do I want to try to continue training barbell in the backyard where the facilities aren't necessarily perfect and like conducive to heavy lifting, and just do however many months COVID lasts of like technique work and like light speed work and just positional stuff, and supplement that with GPP style like gymnastic work that's strict, well, the gymnastic work that you can do in a backyard, and like just all the abs and midline stuff? Or did I want to just pivot and start working on things that I've been shit at and have been ignoring for a long time, like any sort of cardio or conditioning, any sort of long distance, anything over 10 minutes of continuous steady state movement? Like that, those are things that I haven't focused on in like 8 years, because I've been pretty sport specific for almost a decade now. So like my body's gotten really efficient at moving some ways, but really trash at moving other ways. And it's just the cost of being in the sport. So I chose to go the other way and move in ways that I haven't. So I've been running a lot. I've been doing a lot of body weight stuff, like just shit that I haven't done in like almost a decade. And the first 2 months of COVID, it was death. Like I would wake up super sore, and the runs would take me like an hour and a half to recover from. Like you just get that weird cough, just can't recover. But it's getting better. What about you?
That's good, man. I mean, I had to switch it up. Like I kind of went back to bodybuilding for a bit, even though I did manage to get my hands on a rower like very early on. Like that was the extent of my cardio for the first little bit, was just like rowing intervals and bodybuilding. And it was mainly upper body because I just had 250-pound dumbbells. That's all I had. So air squats, I had 225s to warm up with the 25s and then throw the 50s on my back. And then as soon as I got my hands on like more equipment, then I started to just get back to the traditional kind of CrossFit. But it was crazy what happened with the sport during this whole thing, right? You know, the whole shit with Greg Glassman and all the changes at the office and people de-affiliating and stuff. I mean, I'm just curious, like, where do you think the sport is headed? Because I feel like there's still a community, but there just isn't like a name for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like the separation of a lot of gyms, Academy Alliance included, from the brand of CrossFit is like not necessarily going to kill the sport, because we've all been doing this fitness game for a long time, regardless of if you call it CrossFit, GPP, if you're an Olympic lifter. Like our gym at Academy, as you know, as a member and as a coach, is pretty diversified in the way we approach fitness. So I don't think it'll affect our day-to-day approach to things like competition, because we've already seen it. There's already emails circulating around of people trying to coin the next governing body of like functional fitness type competition. Like I've already seen 3 emails talking about different organizations that are going to be circulating through Toronto's fitness scene. So I think there's still going to be a place for CrossFitters or ex-CrossFitters, whatever you want to call yourself. There's going to be a place for you to compete and throw down and be with your friends in an event type setting. It's just a matter of like who's going to run it, where is it going to be. But I have no doubt that that's going to continue being a thing.
Yeah. Because I was just thinking today, like I was just training and I was like, man, like usually I train for the open, right? I'm like, oh, like, you know, I'm going to train. I'm going to try to peak out in whenever it is. It used to be in March. Now it was, you know, it's in October. But then I was like, wait, like, is there even an open? Like, am I even going to do the open? Like, what's my next kind of thing? So I was just curious myself. I know that, like I said, there's still a big community. Like people aren't just going to stop training in the sport. I kind of think of it like NBA and like basketball, right? It's kind of like basketball is its own thing. The NBA is just this organization. And, you know, even if there was no NBA, something would take over and still continue the sport of basketball, right?
Yeah, people would still be willing to play and get together, and someone who has the means or the outreach would definitely be willing to use their connections and form some sort of league or governing body. It would just be a matter of time.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see where it goes. I'm really excited too.
I'm excited too.
Yeah. But I mean, all that being said, I mean, even when I started in the sport, I remember like, you know, you look at the documentaries, you look at the websites, like it was just like a lot of white people, right? And I was just like, man, like I wonder why that is. And then I realized it kind of reminded me of like kind of like hockey. Like hockey is a really expensive sport, right? So it's a little bit more for like wealthy individuals, whereas things like soccer and basketball, it's like, you know, you just get a ball, find a hoop or a net or whatever. But CrossFit, you know, you need a little bit more equipment. You got to pay for a membership and stuff like that. You know, what was your experience like when you started off, and like going and sticking with it through the years, you know, as a black male, like what was your experience like?
Yeah, and yeah, that's a great question actually. So like I think it's definitely tied to the fact that CrossFit at its origin, like at the very beginning, was heavily geared towards like military and police forces. Like that's kind of who it was for at the very beginning,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
who it was marketed for as well. So
Mm-hmm.
as it grew in popularity, we can't forget that the foundational group that kind of, for lack of a better word, started it and kind of put it together and turned it into what it is now were a bunch of military and police officers. Like that's kind of where it came from, which is obviously going to inadvertently make it white, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
whether that was on purpose or not, it probably wasn't. It's just the way it works out.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
when I first started at Academy, I just kind of fell into CrossFit because it was offered as like an after school thing, and that's just what we did. I didn't really have much choice. I was also 17 and not really thinking about the social political agenda behind what I was
Yeah.
doing. I just wanted to be fit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But now, like over the years, I think part of the back end reason as to why I fell so hard in love with weightlifting versus falling head over heels with CrossFit. Like I pivoted to CrossFit in like year 2 of being around Academy, and I
Mm-hmm.
stayed in weightlifting for the remainder of the journey up until now. I love
Yeah.
CrossFit. I love programming it. I love working with CrossFitters. Like it is a fun fitness regime, or it's a fun way to approach fitness, especially
Yeah.
now that there's a competitive stage associated with it. Just makes it way more fun. But it was
Yeah.
never my thing, and I think the lack of diversity around it was definitely part of it. I looked into weightlifting and there was Europeans, there were Canadians, there were Americans, blacks, white, Cubans, Asians, everybody weightlifts. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's people who dominate different weight classes from different nations all over the world. So like it was just, it spoke to me on a way different, stronger level than CrossFit ever did.
Yeah, that's crazy. I never actually thought about that. Like, yeah, when I think about weightlifting, you're right. Like different weight classes, different countries, different body types, and yeah, that's actually really interesting. I never really thought about that. I think CrossFit tried to do that, like maybe towards the end, like where they the way that they were doing their open, it was like, you know, top people from each country.
Yeah,
But
which
still,
was
like
really
the
cool.
yeah, it was super cool. But then still, like the Americans would always dominate. You know, people from Iceland and
Yeah.
Americans just crushed everybody else. All right, cool, cool. So what besides that, like what else kind of drew you to weightlifting? Like was it just like you hated cardio, or like what else about weightlifting kind of made you fall in love with it?
So like at the very beginning when I had finished up with the intern side at Academy, and like I was in the mix now, like working towards becoming a coach and that kind of stuff, I was in a CrossFit class, and Alex had been running a weightlifting class in the back, and he kind of peeked out and had seen me in the CrossFit class, and he asked Danny, who was what the instructor at the time,
Yeah.
if I was ever interested in weightlifting. And he came over and he asked me like, have you ever done a snatch or a clean and jerk? And I said no. And then he said you should. And
What?
I've
Did you
always
ask him
been
why?
someone. No, no, you never ask
That's
Mr.
so
Miyagi why. You just take the wisdom, you absorb it, and work with it. So it's like in that situation, I've always been someone who responds well to like a Mr. Miyagi type of teacher, someone who's been there, done that, they've lived the lifestyle, and now they're in their older stages of life and they're passing on the wisdom that their life gave to you so that you can add to it and take it to the next step and pass it on and continue the cycle of life, right? I like that approach to training. So the second I had this dude who was in his mid 50s or early 50s at the time and had a bronze medal, had dominated the weightlifting scene for almost 15 straight years, is known by anyone who enjoys weightlifting. If you mention Alex Varbanov, they're gonna know who you're talking about. Like the
Yeah.
second I put all of the pieces together and kind of researched and figured out who he was, and then it's like, this dude just told me I should try weightlifting. Fuck that. There's no other question about it. I had to, you know?
That's crazy, man. Yeah, I'm curious what was going through his mind at that moment. Because, I mean, it would have made sense, I think, if you were in that class doing weightlifting and he saw you weightlift and he was like, hey, like, let's do some weightlifting. But you're saying, like, you had never done that at that time, right?
Yeah, and I think a part of it too, like when I jumped in, I think the youngest person on top of me would have been a girl named Nicole. And I think at that time she may have been like in her mid 20s, like maybe 24 to 27. I'm not actually exactly sure. But I think he just saw another young person with some potential to move in a certain way. And
Mm-hmm.
at that time, the only person younger than me would have been Nicky, his son. So, and it's
Oh
just
yeah.
when you're trying to formulate a team, like young energy is always a good thing because young people are usually motivated. They have
Yeah.
that, the potential ceiling feels so much further for them. So pushing day to day really hard on a busted body is easy for young people. It helps
Yeah.
the training environment, you know? So I think he just saw a young kid getting in a CrossFit class and was like, dude, you should do this sport instead.
Nice, nice. And what was it like being on that team? I mean, I lifted with you guys a little bit, but I was never really like in that on that team for a very long period of time. But you had guys like Nikki, you had strong guys like Kyle on that team at a
Yeah.
certain point. What was that whole environment like?
Honestly, like it was so much fun. And like you can recreate those things now, but I feel like it's also something that you can only appreciate when you're young and you have almost no responsibilities. You know what I mean? Like I was still living at home. I got to go home every night to cook dinner by my mom. Like I didn't have to pay rent. Like I could just pour all my time into like
Uh,
school and weightlifting. So like I lived the sport for a couple years at the beginning before I had to be an adult. But at the beginning, it was infectious, infectious. It was all I could talk about. It's all I really cared about. Um, my teammates were my family. Like it was so good, you know. Like you live your day waiting to go to training, and then
yeah,
depending on how well training goes, it might make your day. It might make you super pissed off and and hungry for tomorrow, you know. But
yeah.
it was infectious to say the least. I loved it.
Nice, man. Nice. And how long were you part of that team for?
I was with Alex from 17 to about 25, so about 8 years.
Wow. Nice, nice. And how many competitions did you take part in?
I don't know. Like from 17 to 19, I was too scared to compete. I didn't feel good enough. I just didn't feel confident enough. There was always too much going on in the back
Yeah, yeah,
to actually be doing it in front of people. That would have been too crazy for me.
yeah.
So I forced myself to wait. But then from about 19 through 25, that was 6 years of competing as much as we could, essentially. Like every 3 or 4 months, there was a meet to go to. I've never done the math on it, but
Yeah,
it's
a
gotta
lot.
be a few. Yeah.
And what was the highest level? Because I remember like going to one of your competitions, and I think you were lifting with like some of the top guys in the province. But like, what was the
Yeah.
highest level that you competed in?
Highest that I went to was the nationals at I think it was 2016 nationals. It was the highest I went out in BC.
Nice, nice. And do you remember what your numbers were at that time? Like, what numbers you were hitting?
In training, we were pushing like that was probably me at my peak. So in training, we were pushing snatches at around 130 kilos, 135 kilos, and we were pushing
Damn,
clean and jerks at around 160 through 170, like somewhere in that range, at 85 kilo
damn, 85 kilos. Shit,
body
man.
weight. Yeah.
Crazy, dude. That's a lot of weight, man.
The thing with weightlifting is it's crazy because it's so sport specific that I've had times now outside of being so sport specific where I've felt more capable and stronger than I did feel while I was training for weightlifting competitively. And you can't push the same numbers. Like it's one of those sports where unless you are snatching, clean and jerking, back squatting and front squatting like basically all the time, you do lose it. And it's not to say that you're weaker. You could end up actually being stronger than you were when you were weightlifting. But because you're no longer specific, you just won't be able to do it. It's crazy. I enjoy things that not everybody can do. Like I'm one of those people where if everyone in the room can do it, I'm probably not going to care too much about myself doing it. If it's something that's super hard or super grueling, to the point where like it's too skillful for someone to just pick it up, or maybe it's just too painful. Like you can pick it up, but you're not willing to put in the pain and the work to get good at it. Like those are the things that I actually enjoy doing because they
Yeah,
just have a greater reward, you know?
that's nice, man. Yeah, I love that, and that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast is to sort of show people that side of things. You know what I mean? Like that struggle and how sometimes the more you struggle, like the better the outcome. And I think weightlifting is one of those sports, like you said, it's just so like I know at least for me, man, like I could have like a day where I'm lifting, everything feels amazing, I get really good numbers, and then like I don't lift for a few days, and then I go back and I can't even get like 80%, and it's just
Yeah.
because it's such a damn hard sport, and so skillful, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I know for me, like I've been, weightlifting on and off for like maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And, like I still got so much to learn. And I feel like every lift is just a little bit different, but I feel like when you get the lift to look the same every single time, like that's when you can start to be like more confident in your abilities. Is there something right now that like you're working on when it comes to your lifts?
Yeah, honestly, just because we've been out of the game for 4 months due to COVID, and we just recently opened up academy for the coaching staff to come back and train. So I've only been underneath the barbell for a week and a half as of right now. And
Mm-hmm.
for now, it's, you named it a second ago, consistency. Just trying to make the lifts feel and look the same. The weights really don't matter. They just need to feel and look the same. The second I put on a load that pushes me into a position that isn't so favorable, or I know I shouldn't be in, it's too heavy for that day. And like today, I think I worked up to clean and jerks at like 95 kilos, which is just over 50% of all-time bests,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they felt heavy. And if I had
yeah.
gone up, I'm pretty sure the positions would have shifted and not been great. So I decided not to. And I think that's literally going to be my game for the next 4 to 6 months, just rebuilding my consistency, getting my body to find its groove again so that when I load it, it doesn't explode.
Nice, nice. Let's rewind it a little bit. So, like you and I met at Academy of Lions, and obviously you've been there for a lot of your adult life. How did that sort of come to be? You said it was like an after school program that you were doing, or?
Yeah, so I think it was grade 11 or grade 12. I can't remember. I think it was grade 11 though. After one of our gym classes, we were all just kind of sitting around stretching and like changing to go to our next period. And a woman named Ashley, who used to be part of the back end for Academy, she helped with a lot of youth outreach and like social events. She was that person.
Mm-hmm.
She came into our gym class and kind of just said, we're a CrossFit gym in the neighborhood. We do CrossFit. And if you guys have never seen what that is and you're into athletics, or if you know exactly what I'm talking about and you're interested, come check it out after school. It's totally free to you guys. You can come through 3 times a week and work out with us. So we would go 3 times a week after school and work out with Erin McCutcheon, the
Nice.
RNC from
Yeah.
Academy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's basically my CrossFit mom. She was my first exposure to it. And she beat our ass 3 times a week, and we fell in love.
That's awesome, man. That's really, really good. I like that Academy does that kind of stuff. A lot of
Yeah.
community programs. And then like, how do you transition from that into like working at the Academy? Like, what was the sort of road like?
That program ran through an entire summer. And then at the end of the summer, obviously the program had to end or just refresh into a new group of students.
Yeah.
And I asked if there was a way to stick around, and they ended up offering an internship to the most interested male and female who were part of that little summer crew. So me and a girl, I think her name was Karen. I don't remember, but I think her name was Karen. We both ended up
Mm-hmm.
accepting the internship, which was basically just like, grunt work around the gym, like cleaning up after classes, helping print T-shirts in the back, because back then we still printed our own shirts, and like,
Yeah.
just doing things to help out in exchange for free membership and free classes. And then I rocked that for about a year, and then after finishing high school, I was like asking myself, post-secondary, or do we try to kick up work and maybe take a couple certifications and try to get coaching? Like, what was the road? So I talked to a few people at Academy and just voiced my choice of like this fork in the road. What should I choose? And I ended up settling on trying to kick up work and try to start adult life. And that's kind of where the journey took me. I started racking up Agatsu certifications and hanging out with Sean, Mosin, and Sarah
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot more, and just kind of trying to absorb their knowledge and their flow and the way they taught classes, because I was instantly drawn to the way they delivered information. I found it very digestible. And someone who had no post-secondary schooling, like I didn't go to get my kin degree afterward or any of that. Like I had to learn
Mm-hmm.
on the fly. So finding two people who vibed with me and the way they presented the information being so digestible to me made it really easy for me to pick it up and fall further in love with it. Like I hadn't really contemplated coaching with my full intent until I took my first cert with Sean and saw the way he broke down movement and saw how he got geeky with it. I had just worked out because it felt good and I liked being strong, but I had never
Mm-hmm.
gotten geeky before. And
Yeah.
that first exposure to it really lit me up. I got excited about it.
Yeah. 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 I love the stuff that. Yeah, I love the stuff that Sean does, man. Like you said, I think that's the right word. Like he just geeks out on it, and I feel like that's where you get a lot of good coaches and a lot of like good physios and RMTs, people who just geek out on stuff like that, like movement, because there's so much out there that like you kind of have to weed through all the bullshit to find, okay, like this is the way that you should, perform this movement or that movement. So would you say that like Sean still influences like the way that you coach?
Yeah, definitely. Like I've met so many other people who I also hold in high regard now. Like it's been almost 10 years. So I've met so many different faces along the way. He's definitely one of the original people who influences me. Definitely still does to this day. I still hold a lot of his little truth bombs or knowledge bombs that I heard at the beginning for the first time. A lot of those still ring true for me, and they do influence the way I run classes and the way I approach the programming at Academy, for sure. Like Alex Varbanov also changed the way I approach training and changed the way that I approach certain athletes who want to really go get it, because there's always going to be different levels of athletes, and at Academy the difference is very broad. There's a few who definitely want to train for performance. They want to see numbers physically and quantitatively going up, and that matters to them, whereas some other are a little bit more recreational and they work out just to feel capable and feel good in their body, and they don't necessarily need to be pushing PRs every couple of months because that's not their prerogative. But like Alex being able to teach me how to push a body to its limits, like literally the upper limits,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that in itself was a lesson that the body is not as fragile and as frail as a lot of people think it is. It's extremely adaptable, and
Yeah.
you can get it to do almost anything you want it to do if you're slow, smart, and progressive. If you load things in
Yeah.
the right way, your body will surprise the hell out of you.
Yeah, 100% agree, man. You know what? Like, it took me a while. It's funny, as a physio, you think I would have learned this earlier, but I actually learned that a little bit more in jujitsu because, I'm always dealing with people that are busted. So, I'm perfect example, man. Someone came in, I was checking their ankle, they had rolled it. So I didn't have to put a lot of pressure before they had pain. And then I remember doing jujitsu, and there was like a heel lock or something, like an ankle lock or something I was working on with some guy, and he was like, all right, cool, like crank my ankle. I was like, all right, cool. I cranked it. He's like, all right, like go more. I was like, okay. I went harder. He's like, no, no, more. And I just literally like I felt like I was ripping his foot off his leg. And I was like, man, like, yo, the body can actually withstand a lot. And again, it never really struck me because I'm always dealing with like injured tissue and injured people. So like with those people, like as soon as you get to like a very small amount of pressure, they're just like, stop. And I don't want to push them that much further, but you're absolutely right, man. The body can just withstand some crazy stuff. Obviously as you get older, that kind of changes, but I feel like it still holds true.
Yeah, definitely. And like that, the only reason I brought that up was just to kind of tie it into the who influences me, because that was your initial question. And it's just like all of the people who I've met who are better than me at this fitness game in regards to coaching, like Clance Layler of LPS Strength and Conditioning is another huge person that I take a lot of knowledge from. And I jack a lot of his style and his flow because he's real. I spent an entire summer training with these guys out in North York, and I saw some of the strongest people that I've ever met in my entire life in that one space,
Yeah.
And it was crazy because they were all athletes from different sports. Like he had hockey players in there, he had football players in there. His daughter's one of the best in the world in regards to weightlifting. Like there were athletes from so many different movement modalities all in one room working towards the exact same goal, which is just to be the best that they possibly can. And like putting myself in rooms like that with people like that is what's given me what I have now, like my knowledge has just been on the fly, constantly searching for rooms where I'm the weakest person, and I just throw myself in there until I'm not the weakest person and I figure some shit out. And
Nice.
that's how it's gone.
Nice, nice. Do you think you'll compete again, or do you think you're just gonna do it recreational for fun, or you don't even know?
I'll never stop lifting. I'll probably do it until my body can't anymore, like due to being too old or pain or arthritis or whatever it ends up being. I'll probably do it forever because I do love what it gives me in regards to calming me down, allowing me to work shit out. It's meditative. You can't do it super
Yeah.
angry. You can't do it super sad because you'll literally get hurt. You have to be zen doing it, which is something that helps me. I was always a little bit of an overactive kid and had a bad temper, so things that force me to not use emotion, like you just calm the hell down and actually do what you're trying to do, things like that are great for me. So I'll probably weightlift forever. In regards to competing, I love the idea of competing again, but I'm not going to pretend that I don't have an ego. So like lifting 60% of what I've lifted in front of groups before does bug me that might go away as I age and mature a little bit. I might be able to shake that off. But as of right
Hmm.
now, the thought of going out in front of people to clean and jerk 130 kilos when I've tried to clean and jerk 170 in front of people bugs me. It really does. And I
Yeah,
know that's
yeah,
a
yeah,
shitty attitude to have, and it's going to get in my way. But I've also, like, I'm one of those peeps who lifts for myself. I don't necessarily
yeah.
need to beat this guy or that girl or be better than this person to justify my journey. I'm lifting because I love to lift. So competing hasn't ever really been a big thing for me. And I envy Nikki, like my main
Yeah.
training partner for that. His competitive drive is nuts. He'll compete with anyone, anytime, any place. You know, he just needs to hear some competitive words and he gets fired up. You know, and I've just never been that person. I don't have that super competitive drive. The things that I do in regards to fitness are for me.
I love Nicky, and obviously like his mindset has gotten him to such high, like to achieve such great things. But I like your mindset, man. Like I feel like that's like when you do something for yourself, like that's what brings you like that joy and that happiness. You know what I mean? And it can potentially get you a lot of great things as well. But it helps you sort of push through, I think, those barriers, right? Because if I'm just trying to beat the guy beside me, like cool, now I beat him. Okay, like now what do I do? Now I'm kind of bored
Yeah,
and I'm just kind of like standing around. But if I'm just like, no, like, okay, cool, I beat this person, but hey, I can keep pushing myself and keep climbing that mountain that I made for myself. So I feel like it's really important to kind of design your own mountain and keep climbing. Almost look at it as like, almost like limitless. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Because if you're just kind of using other people to set your standards, you hit ceilings really quickly. I find so. Yeah, I think that's a good mindset to have, man.
And like to speak to that point with like having a limitless goal when it's yourself, it also helps to improve the like why of your training. If your why is only to beat others, what happens when you're too old or when you're too beat up or when you're injured and you can't beat others? What happens when that why disappears? It's to me is such a fragile why,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
The why for me has always been to be capable, to be strong. If something happens, if an apocalypse happens, if something goes down, I'm pretty sure that I can handle 99% of situations that might occur in a physical way to me, and I'll be fine. And I love
yeah,
knowing that. Like that's my
yeah,
why. I like feeling capable. And
yeah.
that's not fragile because that's never going to go away. I'm going to want to feel capable until the day I die. Whereas beating
100%.
other people at 50 years old, that might go away. I might not have the urge to beat other people. And then without the why, you don't drag your ass to the gym anymore and it falls apart, you know? It's just fragile
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I think of someone like Michael Jordan, like, which is great. I admire Michael Jordan. I love Michael Jordan. He did some great things, but he was always like, I got to beat that person. I got to beat this
Yeah,
person. Like it was just always about like overcoming that other person or that other barrier. And then as soon as like he was done, he was done. Like, maybe he plays basketball, shoots basketballs around a little bit here and there, but like, he's not really doing it to the level that he was anymore. So there is some good to be said about that mindset,
absolutely.
but like you said, it's if you're looking for longevity, I feel like it's about just keeping it to yourself and being like, hey, let me just be better than I was yesterday. Let me just push it a little bit more than I did yesterday.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you how did the way of the barbell come to be? Like, what was the like how did that come to like fruition?
Yeah, so the thought of it actually goes back to a conversation I had with a friend of mine a long time ago where we were talking about how training and real life are so interchangeable in a lot of ways, and how
Yeah,
a lot of the lessons you learn about yourself through training and overcoming barriers and doing things you didn't believe you could actually do can be very easily translated into real life challenges and
yeah,
things that you may doubt are possible in real life. And then we were talking about it in a way where we were looking for a name that we could title a book that we would have written about
yeah.
this exact topic, and we were like, we should call it Way of the Barbell, like Way of the Samurai but Way of the Barbell. And that
Very
stuck
cool,
with me
man.
forever, like, and that now is literally like the ideology that's in my head when I'm training. I train to overcome my weaknesses so that I can apply that to every other moment that I may feel too weak to do something. I go back
Hmm.
in my mind to all of the challenges I've overcome in that little gym, and it's easy for me to think about overcoming everything else in the real world because I feel unstoppable in the gym, and it's easy for me to take that and apply it to everything else.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. Totally. Like, I had a moment today. I was squatting heavy, and I haven't squatted heavy in like months. This maybe my also like my second week doing heavy things, and I was like, man, like I got super weak, man. Squatting is heavy. Like my legs are tired. I was doing like a 6x5 at like 80%, and I was like, man, like I don't want to do that last six set, man. It's gonna suck like shit. But then I started to think about what you just said. Like I started to think, you know what, like it sucks, but doing it is I'm gonna get some sort of reward from it. I'm gonna be sore as shit. It's gonna suck, but then I'm gonna come back next week and I'm gonna be a little bit stronger. Come back the week after a little bit stronger. So yeah, that mindset I feel like is so important. I feel like it's taught me a lot. Like it's taught me about being a beginner, and the whole COVID thing has kind of restarted that whole process for me as well, because when I first started CrossFit, I was just in bodybuilding, so I had a lot of gaps, and it took me a while, but I was very much like, okay, cool, like I'm a beginner, I'm new at this thing, like I need to be patient, work on my muscle up, work on my squat or my mobility. And then I finally started to get good at things, and I started to see the benefits of like putting time into it and being a beginner. And then COVID hit, and then I was like, fuck, I feel like a beginner again. But like you said, it's just like overcoming that stuff just really helps, and you can really apply it to life in general. So just like grinding in the gym, that hurt, that pain that you're like, oh man, this really sucks, but I'm doing it to achieve this goal. Like again, you can just apply that shit to life, and I feel like it's the same thing, whether you're applying for school, a job, or trying to start a business or whatever it is. Like I feel it's just the right mindset to have, grind through it, and anything is possible, like Kevin Garnett says. Do you know, have you seen that clip?
No, I don't know. Which clip is this? It's a commercial or?
It's a clip. It's funny. It sticks with me because my partner Cass brings it up a lot. Kevin Garnett, you know who Kevin Garnett is, right?
Yeah, the basketball player.
Yeah, he was on the Celtics, and one year they won the championship, and there's a video of him just holding the trophy, and he's just screaming. He's like, anything is possible.
That's so good.
And it fucking sticks with me, because the older I get, I'm like, yeah, you know what, man, anything is possible, like you just gotta have the goal, be consistent with it, and just kind of keep chipping away at it and not letting anything get in the way,
Yeah, and I think like to this point again, like there also might just be something to be said for needing a little bit of struggle in your life. We live in North America, and life is super comfy for us. If you think back a good 150 years, where everybody was making their living through farming and all of the things they had to do themselves, that we now have robots and machines and stores to take care of for us. Like life is too easy right now. If you just live this life we have without ever exposing yourself to any type of hardship or struggle, it can be really daunting when something falls apart in your real life and you've never struggled before. You literally don't know how to respond. So like the gym is also a nice way to just expose yourself to this is shit and I don't want to do this, but I'm gonna do it just because I can.
Yeah, exactly, man. That's a good point, man. I feel like that's one of the good things about the struggle is like, in the gym, you kind of make the struggle. You say, okay, I want to squat, whatever, 100 kilos. So I'm going to work my way up till I hit 100 kilos. It's somewhat controlled, and, you have your goal, you have your plan. But it's nice to do that because you're right. Like it just preps you for life, because life doesn't give a shit. Life will just throw COVID at you. It's just all of a sudden just throw COVID at you and be like, yo, guess what? You can't work now. You can't go to the grocery store. You can't travel. You can't do all these things.
Can't see
it
your
sucks.
Friends. Yeah, can't go outside. I mean? You're just gonna be inside, depressed with yourself. And if you've never experienced any of that type of alone struggle before, it's gonna be rough.
Yeah, it is gonna be rough. I mean, I think it was rough for all of us all together. But yeah, those of us who struggled kind of came out the other end and just like, you know what, like yeah, that sucked, but I'm still here, and I knew I was gonna be here.
Yeah, and not to downplay COVID or anything. Working out has not helped make COVID any easier. This has been super, super depressing not being able to see anybody, but,
Yeah, big change. But I mean, good news is like, things are slowly opening up, and, the provinces, I think the province did a pretty good job in terms of dealing with the situation. Obviously, things in hindsight, things could always be better. But I mean, I think the community's done a pretty good job of keeping the numbers low and slowly following all the rules to keep everyone safe.
I agree.
All right. So Jay, I did want to ask you, the Verbanovs aren't at the academy anymore. And, I was curious because I'm still thinking about competing a little bit. Obviously it's COVID right now, so we got to wait and stuff like that. But, have you ever thought about making your own team at the academy and, just training a bunch of athletes to compete?
Yeah, I'm super happy you asked me that. But basically, with the way of the barbell crew that we have now, Monday through Friday, um, there's been a little bit of interest building, and there are definitely some athletes in there who are interested in competing, and they're getting to the point now where they're consistent enough to maybe handle the nerves of a crowd watching and still be able to perform. So like the need for a team is getting there. You're not the first one to mention wanting to compete, and it's something that we on the back end were actually trying to set up and put in place. The seasons were supposed to roll over in March. So I was going to register the academy to have a weightlifting team. We're probably just going to call it Academy Alliance Weightlifting or something super simple. But in the middle of emailing back and forth with an OWA rep and setting everything up on the back end, COVID hit, and they had to cancel all their registrations for new clubs because there's not going to be any competitions for the foreseeable future until we kind of figure out this new landscape. So as of right now, there is no weightlifting club associated with Academy. You would just be coming for regular classes. But the moment competitions start rolling back in and things like that are a possibility, we'll follow through with what we were already doing in March and get a club signed up. So that'll definitely be a thing.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. It's funny because when I work on my work schedule, because I know that like the Verbanovs trained at like 5 to like 8 p.m. I was always working then, except on Fridays, so I could always join in on Fridays. But right now, like my Mondays off and my Fridays are off, so I'm just like, oh man, like if there's a team at 5 o'clock, like I'm down to train on Monday and Friday. Like I'm there 2 days a week at least. So it's awesome, man.
And like to that point too, we have no idea what time it's going to be. Like this could also be something that could be offered as an open time thing so that it's a little bit more accessible, because that was something that was hard too. Before we had that team slot, but it was from 5:30 to 7:30, which is kind of the minimum amount that you'd need to train, because that slot was only available 3 times a week, right? So you were getting those 3 2-hour sessions. That's 6 hours a week. Like that's bare minimum if you plan on competing in anything. So if when we revamp that, the plan is to make it as accessible as possible so that the athletes feel like they're moving in the right direction and have the space and the time they need.
Nice, nice, awesome, man. Looking forward to it, dude.
Yeah.
All right, man. So let's wrap things up here. If people wanna get in touch with you for some coaching or some weightlifting, like how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, they can reach me at justin@academyalliance.com. Just shoot me an email, let me know what's up. If you follow me on Instagram, you can also just DM me through Instagram and we can have a little discussion. And like, even if you're not interested in weightlifting or you're not sure, you've never tried it before, we can just have a conversation about it, give you the deets, and you can see if it's something that vibes with you. And if it is, we'll test it out.
Sweet. All right, Justin, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy guy. Appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to training again, man. I need to work on my lifting quite a bit.
We're gonna get it, man. Don't worry.
All right, buddy. We'll chat soon.
Thanks, man.
Later.
Later.